Hey, Internet. Good morning, Universe. All that kind of stuff in a low definition here because I'm out on the patio and I have no idea if the stream is going to work from out here just sitting with the Mac laptop. But it's been so many days since I really did anything online. I'm checking my audio levels here, make sure they're not spiking with the internal mic. So many days since I did anything for you in any real substance that I'm feeling kind of bad about it. And I don't want to make any excuses. uh, it's been good, but it's been really intense. And I've turned over one of many new leaves, and one of them is an attempt to not use blue light after the sun goes down in order to try to not just get better sleep. I mean, that's part of it, is that blue light elevates your cortisol levels, which make your sleep patterns get all wonky because you think it's daytime when it's night and all this kind of stuff. And blue light's in any kind of fake light, I think even fire. Although I don't know about that one. But I have these like blue light blocking glasses I sometimes wear at night, and when I take them off, the fire's like so blue. It's like so there's blue light there too. Anyhow, trying to just kind of minimize that, in part for the sleep. Stream quality lowered because connection was not fast enough. Okay, that's fine, but hopefully I'm still on. That's because of sleep, but just sort of like a casual thing. A little less TV, a little less nonsense, a little less media. I can't look at Twitter, late at night, that kind of thing. But that means then if I haven't gotten to a video by 8:30, 9 o'clock, then there's no video going to happen. And so I've not been on for a few days. You knew I was going to the camp last week over in Iowa, the Iodesika camp, and that was great. Taught some pre-confirmands about Ten Commandments and Holy Absolution. I don't know how well I really talked about Holy Absolution, but definitely got the Ten Commandments done. Absolution of the office of the ministry is it's an interesting thing to try to teach to a 10-year-old or 11-year-old and all that. So, and then this week there's been a fun time here in Rockford. That goes even further back in that using Everbook and getting things done. Every year I do this annual review where I try to look at the last year and spend some time rethinking things and set some goals and hopefully have some of those be long-term goals and things like that. And that was supposed to happen about 2 weeks ago. And I got I say deathly sick, but I wasn't deathly sick. I didn't have a fever, but I couldn't swallow well. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak, and then I couldn't breathe through my nose. And since I have sleep apnea and sleep with this thing that goes under my nose and blows air up my nose to keep me alive, that meant I got nights of really bad sleep. And then it's trying to do this thing that ended up being I booked 3 days. I should have booked like a week and a half anyway for this project. I did get through it. So Monday I came back to life. The end of August. After and I still preached and stuff, but I came back to life, ready to go, ready to hit the road, and it's been one new, unforeseen, fun thing after another. And I say fun with a smile on my face because I really do mean it. There was a time when in ministry I used to let things that didn't go the way I expected or the way that I wanted to, or seemed maybe like they weren't necessarily all in good love. I used to let them really get to me. And the reasons why that isn't the case, aka mindfulness, improving nutrition, getting better sleep, all those things have helped so that I've been able to face this week kind of enjoying it. It's kind of nuts. As hard as it's been, and it's like by hard I mean nonstop. I mean, right now, what is it? It's 6:30 a.m. So I'm going from 6 a.m. till about 9 p.m. work straight for 3 days here. And sorry about my this thing over here is going to keep making noise that turns on and off. And I don't mind. I don't mind. I mean, I'd like to have a little more time to do the stuff I want to do rather than trying to put out fires. But it's been kind of fun. But what I haven't been able to do is videos. And I feel really bad about that because my goal, at least at one point, was daily short ones. I don't know if that's still a goal. I hope it's a goal. It's certainly a goal to be on, to be here, to be present. How can you lower the stream quality more, YouTube? It's already at its bottom. Is it more? Am I not going at all? Did it turn off? Oh, I left. It turned off. I'm going to move. Maybe it still got me there. Oh, there we go. I'm going to move over here. I'll stand up. Is it still going? Goodness gracious. This is fun. See, this is how bad it is when you try to do a video. It's not so bad. I'll stand over here in the sunshine. I got to lean. Oh, it's wet. Crap. Now I need to get did I say that crap on TV? I shouldn't have said that, right? I got to get a towel in order to. Speaking of all the crazy, this towel, I won't show you. It's funny. It's a TV show that a lot of people don't watch anymore. What was I saying? Oh, because I really want to do them regularly, if not daily, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. My goal is to get to a point where I'm doing something like unto a prep for the coming Sunday, with the text, but throwing other stuff in too. Saturday morning Q&A is still very much in the works. And by the way, if you're an early riser, because you got to be watching live at this point, I'm going to be doing Saturday morning Q&A this Saturday. Probably kicking it off at 7 a.m. and probably stopping by 8 because I want to have a game morning with my kids. But the goal is to do an early morning Q&A and not go all morning long. As much as I like to, I really enjoy that with y'all. But it's at least not this week going to be that. So that's the goal, to get to that. So anyway, that's updates. Blah blah blah. What I want to talk about a little bit is so I did a little video on mass shootings and the darkness of the human spirit. And of course, the comments immediately focused not on the real point in me talking about how it's our lack of value for human life that is behind this, and that if we don't change that, even a totalitarian government that takes away our guns entirely and everything else isn't going to stop people from doing evil things. It's going to be a change of heart that does it. And we didn't focus on that, of course. The comments went straight into Second Amendment conversations, which fine, that's cool. I like that too. And they were pretty civil, which is great. I appreciate civil conversations. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and recommend this. If you want to hear a leftist and a rightist have one of the most fascinating, honest, careful, and not really playing the game of either side conversation you've ever heard, there's a new podcast by a guy named Eric Weinstein, and he interviews Peter Thiel, who's like an arch conservative, and Weinstein's definitely a leftist. And they work together, which is interesting, but they have a great conversation about the state of life on the planet. And there's some things where their evolutionary radicalism and whatnot, I would disagree with, and it's very high science and heady, but their model for having a conversation is pretty cool. If more of us were talking that way about the problems, I don't think. Well, what was it this morning? One of the guys on Twitter, I don't even know who this guy was. If your child has a gun and is planning to do a mass shooting and commit suicide, wouldn't you want a law against that? If you say no, you're crazy. Okay. But it wasn't that. It was, wouldn't you want a law against them owning a gun? If you say no, you're crazy, right? So okay. So you're attempting to do like a political discourse by extreme hyperbole question to settle a law once for all, and then at the end making sure that anybody that would have a nuanced answer to your pretty weird question, honestly, that they're crazy for having nuance in their thinking. I mean, and I even wrote back, which is probably pretty dumb of me, if my child had an AR-15, why would I give my child an AR-15? Who's going to do that? Yeah, maybe the parents should be arrested for that one, for giving a minor, something like, I don't know, But if my child was an adult and had an AR-15 and I knew they were going to do this, why would I not call the police beforehand? It just doesn't make any sense. And then you call people crazy. Calling people crazy doesn't help us get anywhere. What, we're going to put half of us? Half the country thinks one way and half the country thinks the other way. So the one half that wants to get rid of guns, are you planning to put all of us in jail? Is that your plan? You're going to let the illegal immigrants who are in the ICE facilities out and put all of us in, but you're going to need to build more to put us there. And who's going to use the guns to put us there? And once they do, they have all the guns and they put us there. Why are they going to listen to you anymore? I mean, that's kind of the conspiracy edge of it. But how is this the answer? You're advocating violence. By saying you want to take away guns, do you realize you're advocating violence? Isn't this fascinating? You cannot take away guns without violence. It will create violence. It's insane. You're advocating a small war, one way or the other. You're advocating hurting people. You're advocating using the sword. So if you say you're against violence and you don't like gun violence, the answer is not more violence. The answer's gotta be changing people's minds. And anyway, that's okay. So I don't even want to talk about that. That's not even my point. Yeah, I have a viewpoint on this, And you can get mad at me about that or whatever and say it's in the way of me being a pastor. Okay, fine. I didn't sign up to not be a citizen when I signed up to be a pastor. But I'm cool with debating this. I'm cool with disagreeing with this. But someone brought up a really cool point in one of the comments that I think is highly worth considering its implications for the world. All right? And the comment began with, look out, Pastor, you're letting your theology get in the way of your politics, which I thought, that's interesting. Like, shouldn't it? I could, I'd love to hear or think about if I got bad theology in the way of my politics. That's an issue. But it was about a comment I'd made about how I didn't think a law is going to stop a lawbreaker, right? So you're going to make a gun against a certain, you're going to make a law against a certain kind of behavior. Forget guns. Get guns out of it for a second. I'm just talking philosophy right now. If you're going to make a law against a certain kind of behavior, who's it going to stop? It's going to stop somebody who believes they should not break the law. Who's it not going to stop? Somebody who doesn't care about breaking the law. And so making more laws against those who are already keeping the laws to punish those who don't already keep the laws we have, because that's what they're breaking laws when they do these things that are affecting the conversation. I don't think it's going to stop them. I don't see how it would or why it would. They don't care. They don't care. And they will seek to find a way. Now again, so that's the comment that was said that, that the theology is in the way of that. I'm not sure how my theology is in the way of that, but what I do think is interesting in this regard. So he put with the comment, and thank you, viewer, for putting that in the comments. You put in my head how my theology can be in the way of this. And this is really a tough concept. Lutherans, in theory, believe this. The Bible certainly says it very clearly. Excuse me. And Christians, I never hear Christians talk this way. And even Lutherans who in theory believe this don't really hang enough on this in my mind. But Paul in Romans, I believe it's 6, 7, and 8. It's really 7. But he talks this way also in 1 Corinthians. But the high point I think is in 7. He says that the law was given to increase transgression. Let that sit in your head for a second. Don't dismiss it, right? Before you go and argue about it, just ponder. The law was given to increase transgression. Now, when he's talking about the Old Covenant, when he's talking about the Levitical codes, we can understand this to mean that they were there to both curb the people of Israel to stay together long enough for the seed, who is Jesus, to eventually be born, right? So there's that. But it also, at the same time, demonstrated the incapacity of humanity to be faithful to a God who was giving them everything if only they would do this, that, and this. And in that demonstration, the law proved that the law is not capable of fixing our problems, right, of saving mankind. Now, it's just not about just saving mankind from like sin, death, and the devil as some sort of final utopian salvation, which of course I do believe in. It's also about saving mankind in the present from himself and his own behavior, his own actions. And so to understand that the surest way to have anybody want to not do something is to tell them to not do it. That is a native reality in fallen humanity, which Christians should believe because the Bible says it. This is not to say we shouldn't have laws. The law is still a curb. It's not like it doesn't curb, right? The punishment can still stop the person who has been inspired to transgression to not transgress because they see the punishment. But that doesn't mean that the law won't increase the transgression in some place. If not in their hearts, then also among others. So the most surefire way to have a congregation full of, arrogant people who secretly do a lot of evil things but don't tell anybody is to preach a whole lot of law and very little gospel. Tell them all the stuff they're supposed to do to be righteous. You'll get a bunch of people who clean up real nice, they'll look good, and they'll have all sorts of skeletons in their closet. That's the application to preaching. That's the application to, I think, and at least initially, to congregational life. Which doesn't mean you don't preach the law. It's not an antinomian statement at all. It's not against the law. It's not against laws. It's that you don't trust the law I should almost say it, to curb a lawbreaker. You don't trust the law to stop a lawbreaker. Yeah, it'll curb him, but it won't stop him. He will still break the law. And understand that it will also inflame within the law abider a desire to break the law at some point. The law itself will increase the transgression. So Paul goes on, he says, I would not have known what coveting was, but that it said, you shall not covet. Right? So it is only once I realize how wrong coveting is that I'm aware of how often I covet, and then in trying not to covet, find myself having a harder time of it than I did before when I didn't try not to. I mean, really, today, try not to want anything, and you will find you actually want stuff more when you can't get to it, and know you're wrong for wanting to get there. You'll be more discontent than you were before. And he uses that one about the 9th/10th commandments in order to demonstrate what happens with all of them, right? So with all that said, it's kind of important to be aware that at a certain point, as a civilization, that works in outside of church. It's not a church law or a church rule or a church dogma. It's a first article reality. And the example I'd point to historically, which we really should think about a lot, would be something called prohibition. Prohibition. Remember that one? It's when the government decided that something was really bad and was ruining a bunch of people's lives, and they made it illegal. And the result was a lot of people broke the law, and maybe worse than that, we created even worse lawbreakers. We created out of that an opportunity, an entrepreneurial event that we today lovingly refer to as the mafia, where those who organized the ability to provide the illegal alcohols, well, they had an avenue for making money that would never be taxed, and they could make a whole lot of it. And that is something to consider as a possibility should you ban these weapons. Yeah, you just know that the mafia is still there. They're still out there working. I know from various news stories I've read, there are different avenues they've moved into, but you give someone a market, and I don't believe in the sense of the free market like it's going to save the world, but I believe that a free market happens. You can't stop it. It's going to do its thing. If there is a market, it will be filled by someone who fills the market. And so that would be then, just look at prohibition on alcohol. That's an example of the law increased the trespass. It made Chicago particularly a much more violent place to ban alcohol than it was before they banned alcohol, even though you had individuals doing violence. This gets back to the Weinstein and the Thiel conversation, was really interesting. You can't actually get rid of violence in the world. You know that, right? I mean, you should really know that. Christian, non-Christian, doesn't matter. These guys aren't Christians. You can't get rid of violence in the world. Either you have the violence all being controlled by one party, we can call them the state, right, the country. Violence is all in their hands, and they use it to stop everybody else from doing violence. Or the violence is not all in their hands, but is in everybody's hands, and you have individuals that sometimes do violence. And, it's going to happen one way or the other. But if you put all of it in the government's hands, that's not going to stop violence. It'll just be whoever's in charge gets to do the violence and tell us about it, and then we're supposed to say, yeah, you did violence against the right bad people. Good for you. So you can't get rid of the violence. It's going to be there. The question is, which one is better as a whole for the most number of people? To have a single power with all control of the violence? I mean, do we want kings again? Is that really what we want? I'm actually not opposed to monarchy in theory, by the way, but that's kind of, I prefer monarchy that knows it's monarchy to monarchy that pretends it's not monarchy, and monarchy that has a way to get rid of it after the good king dies without making his son automatically king, like they do in, a number of totalitarian fascist/communist regimes. But okay, so is that the better thing? Or is the better thing to allow sporadic occurrences of violence to occur by individuals in a country which still has like a a modest level of centralized violence power to stop it and combats it on the ground? Or is the answer, full chaos, anarchy, which would be no rules, no laws, that's not where we live, and I'm not advocating that. Is that the better answer? And history is the argument of experiencing this, and we have a lot to draw on in it. And it's kind of my opinion, sorry if you don't like it, that the U.S. did a pretty good job initially of setting up a middle ground where you had a nice mix of both, where you could let the private citizen feel private and have enough recourse to self-defense that they did not feel entirely threatened by either their government or their neighbors. And yet you also had a government, state initially, but now federal, that had the authority to stop them from doing truly despicable things. And that seemed like a good idea to me. I mean, maybe I'm still just believing what they taught me in grade school about the Constitution, and I haven't really understood it, but it seems to have worked out pretty well compared to what I hear or what I see, and who knows what you can trust about global news, but what you hear or see about some of these other areas where well, say you don't have the right to defend yourself. So anyhow, that point is more about just don't be so Christian biblical naive as to think you're going to get rid of sin by making a law, right? Like that should be something, regardless of what your political party is, you have no problem with. You're not going to stop sin by making a law. And in that regard, you also need to believe that the law will increase the trespass amongst lawbreakers, particularly. It will not decrease it, it will increase it. And that's just a reality of fallen nature. And then consider that because of our fallen nature being self-centered in every way, self-preserving in every way, we have violence baked into our humanity, and it is impossible for us to remove it from this present evil age. That doesn't mean that we should like it or that we should enact on it. We should just acknowledge that as a civilization, as a planet, we can't remove it. Jesus says it a different way. The poor you will always have with you. Right? We can't remove poverty either. Doesn't mean you shouldn't help the poor. Of course you should help the poor. But you're not going to be able to remove it. And then know that any attempt to stop violence beyond, I'm going to not be violent and speak to people about not being violent, anything beyond that is in fact violence. And so you defeat your own goal, right, at the end of the day. And you don't have to be a Christian to agree with that, but Christians should see that in our understanding of original sin, yeah, regardless of your political persuasion. And then don't be afraid of letting your theology influence your political persuasion. It really should. Your philosophy and your theology should not be distinct from each other. They should be very close. That doesn't mean that all Christians have to agree with me or otherwise, or see the same line of reasoning, or not have nuance to any of these conversations. There should be nuance in these conversations. I do not think that if you heard this and you don't think I'm completely right in every way, you're crazy. I know, that's like a radical thing to say, right? Like you're not crazy for maybe thinking I said something not perfectly? Wow. Yeah? No, I don't think that. And I'm glad for the comments when you don't call me crazy and you challenge and we go back and forth a little bit and I'll think about it. I don't know if I'm going to change my mind, but maybe I will. Yeah? And maybe I'll change yours. I mean, that's the free society, right? That's the great experiment of believing that ideas have consequences and value, and that the freedom of speech protects the ability to continue to have those better ideas traded in a market where the good stuff rises to the top. Which, by the way, you want to know why I'm really against removing the Second Amendment? I don't even care about guns that much. I mean, sure. Shooting them at a target is pretty fun. I like competing, and so I like shooting a ball at a basket, and I like shooting a bullet at a little bell that goes ding, ding, ding when I hit it. Like, that's fun, okay? And, yeah, if things get really ugly, and I'm talking like, we can't feed the planet anymore, and people are stealing from each other, and we're living road warrior zombie apocalypse, but no zombies kind of way. Do I want to have a gun? Kinda do. I have daughters, but I ultimately, I don't care. The Lord is going to raise me on the last day if you kill me or my children or what have you. The reason I care about the Second Amendment is the First Amendment. That's why I care. Because that thing called the Bill of Rights kind of came as a package deal. And the moment we change it without a constitutional amendment, the rest of them can be changed pretty easily at that point, right? And that would be the freedom to have a conversation, which is being taken from us by bullying at the moment. But do you really want it taken by violence? And I don't mean like the violence of Antifa. I mean like the government's violence. Do you really want it taken away by that? Another great line from the Weinstein and Thiel conversation was how you really know you're in a civilization where there is no freedom at all when 85 to 95% of the people all agree on everything. What that means is that they're not free to voice disagreement, because there's no way 90%, 95%, 98% of people agree on everything. Yeah. So the divine leader of North Korea, of course, we think he's great. Why would we question that? No? Well, is that what we want? It certainly seems to be the culture being permeated in certain areas, and you could say, well, the other side does it too. Okay, fine. Yeah, that doesn't make it right, does it? Nuance, conversation, freedom of speech, it's a good thing. And why do I like that a lot? Because of the rest of the First Amendment, which is about the freedom of my religion. Yeah, that's why I care. It's not that I just like shooting stuff. Although I'm hoping to eventually kill my own food. I would like to do that. I would like to find a way to go out and find a nice, healthy, more than pasture-raised ruminant, and to thank the Lord for the creation of this good gift, and to, with as little pain as possible, put this good gift into me, as our Lord gave us the right and the gift of doing, the blessing of doing in Genesis 6, which I'm increasingly of the opinion wasn't a fluke. But you could do that with a bow too, I suppose. But are you gonna outlaw bows? Can you do a mass bow shooting? Bet you could. You know about the machete genocide in Rwanda? Anyway, you're not gonna stop violence, right? And if you are, you're gonna use violence. So as you're having these conversations, try to keep that in mind and let that influence whatever your actual position is. If you want a law, fine. But know what laws do. Know what man is and what is in a man. And don't be naive about human nature. While at the same time, by the way, don't put your hope in the present age anyway. I love talking about this stuff, and yet I don't. Because I'm afraid you're going to now go away and you're going to be like, but what about Jesus? But you're not. You won't ask that question because, well, if you might, and you'll get mad at me because I didn't talk about it, or you won't think about it. And then the issue is, well, I didn't give you that, did I? Didn't really talk about that. And so why did the law come to increase the trespass? It came to increase the trespass so that sin might be shown to be utterly sinful. It's the rest of the text. It might be shown to be utterly sinful, that we might be shown to be so broken, so evil, so backwards that we could even take the law of God, which Luther calls, and I agree with him, the most salutary doctrine of life. He's not talking about salvation, he's talking about creation. The law of God, the most salutary doctrine of life. We can take that and we can actually use it for evil. We use it for ourselves rather than for, well, the neighbors for whom it was created. And that's something not to forget as we argue these things, but all the more, why don't you really want to forget it? Not so you can argue well about rights. You don't want to forget that the law cannot advance you to salvation either here or in the future, because you don't want to forget your need, which has been answered exclusively and entirely in the resurrection of the one man, Jesus Christ. You don't want to forget that. Huh? And the naivety which says we can stop violence in this age, the naivety which says that man is not the things that the New Testament calls man, dangerous. That naivety has in it the leaven which is in the process of forgetting Christ. That doesn't mean you are not a Christian, but it does mean you don't have all the reasons the Bible gives you to be a Christian. And when you start taking away the reasons the Bible has to gives you to be a Christian, it's kind of like taking a body and cutting off pieces. Fingers, legs, arms. How much body can you cut off before there's no body left? And that is, well, that's not easily answered. That's a gray line, honestly. It's a gray line. Where does faith die? So don't be so naive about man in your pursuit of politics. that you forget the need we all have, and then don't be so inspired by your politics that you don't let your theology have any influence on it at all. So, hey, 30 minutes. This wasn't supposed to be like this, you people. Anyway, I hope to. I'm not. I maybe we'll look at the comments later. I got a million things to get to in my world today. But if I'm not back on in the next 2 days, plan on Saturday morning. There'll be a live Q&A, probably starting at 7 a.m. I know it's early, but I turned into a morning person. Eating meat made me a morning person. I don't get it. I don't. It doesn't make sense. But it's working. So hopefully 7 a.m. we'll do a Q&A, and I'll get straight in the comments. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. And yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you soon. Yeah, rock on.